computer trading on Wall Street. Forget thoughtful value-creating investing or an honest competition between two individuals to try to identify the best idea, make an investment, and cultivate it in this country. That's for losers. More than half of the trades made today were done by mindless supercomputers swapping thousands of shares per second. Think of it like a giant game of Pong, where stocks are hit back and forth, only in this case, the computer racks up pennies instead of points. They use your 401k dollars to do it. Doesn't sound like much until you consider the potential billion shares traded each day, which is not money that's flying into our country, but is purely chips being traded back and forth between those who own supercomputers. Last night, 60 Minutes profiled the owner of one small version of this type of a firm.
Humans are not involved in the trading because humans are way too slow to trade on the kinds of opportunities that we're trying to capture. We're trying to capture opportunities that exist for only fractions of a second.
What's the point of buying and selling a stock that you hold for 3 minutes?
Just the same objective that all other participants have in the market is to make money. You buy low, sell high, that's how you make money.
It's all about extracting money from the system, it seems, without putting anything back into it. Why would our government encourage an investment system that doesn't encourage our savings, your savings, to be invested in our country, but instead allows those with supercomputers to use the savings from your labor for a computer game in which they get rich and we don't get much of anything? One of the strongest critics of this destructive game is Democratic Senator from Delaware, Ted Kaufman, who was featured in the 60 Minutes piece last night. Senator Kaufman, why does America have a stock market? Is it so that we can play these video games? Is that why we have?
No.
Is that why this is illegal?
No. What it is it's supposed to encourage long-term investment, but the main thing it was doing, it's always done so well, is provide capital to new small corporations that are coming along so they become big corporations and then create jobs. That's what the whole reason for the market has been for many years, but we've kind of veered a little bit off course. One of the things is, Dylan, the two things that make this country great are democracy and our capital markets. I mean, that's really what, people come from all over the world, or did come from all over the world to be in our markets because they were fair, they were on the level, they knew they were going to get a fair deal. It would really be very, very bad for the country if, in fact, we lose the credibility of these markets and people start trading overseas. They can trade in Singapore, Hong Kong, London, Frankfurt. We have to bring them home for here, number one. Number two, get back to your first question, is we also have to be the vehicle so that small businesses become big businesses.
But why is it that our government, the SEC, whatever it is, that is in charge of the rules of our stock market, why would the government allow the rule changes that allow people to make money playing ping pong with 401k dollars as opposed to being forced to do the hard work of actually identifying an investment in this country?
Well, Dylan, we went through a period, especially the last 8 years, and I'm not being critical of the Bush administration, but critical of the Bush administration. Go back and look at what Alan Greenspan said and what they said. They said, we don't need regulation. We don't need regulation. Basically, the markets, and again, Alan Greenspan's a very smart man, and after it was over, he said, I'm sorry, I'm dismayed. Turned out self-regulation doesn't work. But we had an environment, Bernie Madoff was one example of it, where for years we went, where we felt that anything was okay. Just leave it up to the market in the Wild West. And then we had our great, incredible financial meltdown, which showed what happened with the credit default swaps and the derivatives. Now, what happened here, while this was happening, we went from basically a floor-based system where people you used to see, where traders were on the floor and they trade with their fingers about how many stock they won, the rest of that. And we used to use eighths as a way to measure. We went to a digitalization, decimalization system, and that's when the computers took over. And they essentially went from 30 to 70% of the market with no regulation. Well, I always like to say, if in fact we'd had regulation when this high-speed computer started and the points you made, we would have looked into those things and we would have had, it's like pruning a bush. We would have had a bush and we would have pruned it as it grew. We would have made sure that we maintained the capital formation. We'd make sure that we took care of long-term investors and prune it. But basically what happened is we had this tree and we just stepped back. And for 2, 4, 6, 8 years, it grew. It is now a monster. Billions of dollars at stake. God only knows what's going on. We have really no real idea what's happening in these markets because we can't keep track of what's going on. And so now, trimming that bush back, when there's so much money involved and so much power involved. It's an incredibly, incredibly difficult problem. And I've been working on it for a while.
Is it possible for the government to set up rules, whether it's with the tax code or market regulations, that would encourage somebody who wants to get rich on Wall Street to do it not by holding stocks for 11 seconds at a time with a computer, but by forcing me to compete with you, Senator Kaufman, to figure out what's the best idea, and the one who is able to, who's good at that, gets rich, a la the sort of Warren Buffett mythology.
Right. Well, Dylan, really, that's one way. That would be very difficult, because of the root cause, if we don't know what's going on in those black boxes, these computers, and now, we used to just have a few markets. Now we have over 50 markets. We have things called dark pools where these things go on. There's all kinds of new rules. We have to regulate this, Dylan. There isn't any other way around it. There's no way around it. We've got to regulate it. And the Securities and Exchange Commission, I wrote in August of last year, August, not this past August, August a year ago, and talked about how to do market structure, and the SEC said they were going to. Then we had this flash, and we really, it just takes so long to get the rules and to do the process and the rest of it. And then May 6th, we had the flash crash, and all of a sudden everybody says, oh my God, this is going to be an incredible problem. We have to do something about it. But we really have to go in there and do the hard regulatory work. I'm convinced that Mary Shapiro wants to do that. We just got to work our way through it. I tried to get in the Dodd-Frank legislation something that would have given more incentive for the SEC to move quicker. And I am concerned, I've written to Mary Shapiro, I'm concerned with all the new regulations coming out of the Dodd-Frank bill that we may forget to do this high-frequency trading. But there's an answer to it. The first step we have to do is we have to know what's going on. Right now, we do not know the broker or the time on these trades. We need to have a thing called tagging, so we keep track of everything we do. We have to have it so that the SEC can get a look at it, but we also need so academics and the people in the press can go in there and see what actually is happening. The thing that concerns me the most is we're getting great pushback on doing any of this. Great pushback. And Dylan, I don't know about your life, but in my life, when people don't want you to see what's going on, know what's going on, there's something there that they don't want us to see because there's a good reason for it.
So I couldn't agree with you more. What could the average person who's watching this show or reading about this on the internet do to help you, as you appear to be one of the few political leaders in this country who has been courageous enough to try to find out what's in the black box?
Well, I think get in touch. It's the same old thing. It gets old, but it's new. Get a hold of your local senator and House member. Tell them this is what we have to do. Contact the Securities and Exchange Commission. Let them know how important this is. This is just something. It's very, very. It's not that. It's really not that complicated. But as soon as people start talking about computers and high speed and algorithms, everybody kind of turns on. Take your time, folks out there watching. Spend a little time on this thing, and let's just get things going at greatest roots level to see it. And the other thing has to happen. We've got to encourage people on Wall Street that know what's going on to come out and tell the truth. Manoush last night on the show, talked about it. Joe Saluzzi talked about it on the show. We have to get Wall Street into this thing. We have to get the high-frequency traders into this thing. We've got to get those folks to say, look, you're going to kill the goose to lay the golden egg for everybody. But we've got to find out what's actually going on in these trades with these high-frequency traders. What is actually happening? Just a single thing. They cancel over 90% of their orders, Dylan. 90% of their orders are canceled. Now, what do you think is going on there? So there's all kinds of allegations about what's happening. We have to get in there and find out what it is, and we got to get back in the good old regulation business. We got to get back into oversight of it by the Congress. We have to get back into our regulatory agents getting involved. We have to get back Americans getting involved. And frankly, your shows and talking about this thing, I think, is the single best thing we can do to get this right.
Well, listen, we'll do it every day at 4 o'clock, Senator, until it is right.
I know.
And we appreciate your efforts on our behalf. We'll talk to you sooner rather than later, I'm sure. Ted Kaufman, thank you so much, sir.
Hey, Dylan, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Still ahead here on the DR Show. China admitting the truth finally about the current